As he mentioned, this forum will be held to share the latest information and the useful information. Thank you very much. Now we have the first session with our moderator. Please allow me to introduce our moderator, Mr. Mark Cochran, briefly. Mr. Mark Cochran, he is the UFI Regional Manager, Asia Pacific, and also the Managing Director of Business Strategies Group, a business intelligence and strategy consulting firm focused on the B2B media industry in Asia, with a particular emphasis on exhibitions and events in Asia. So its consulting practice and its relationship with UFI, BSG works with major exhibition organizers, venues, and governments across Asia. So ladies and gentlemen, now please welcome our moderator, Mr. Mark Cochran, with a big cat. Could you please come up to the stage?
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back here at AEF. This is actually my fourth time, I believe, moderating this event. So I feel like a regular now and feel very welcome when I'm here. So I think these events are really a good opportunity to take stock of where our industry is and where we're headed. And actually, they're becoming more important because there's more change happening in our industry now than has ever happened before. Over the years, especially in Asia, I think we became quite complacent about, we were immune to all the changes happening in other industries. Plenty of other industries were affected by digital tools and digital platforms. You have the hotel industry affected by Airbnb, you've got Uber and taxis. But face-to-face events, especially in Asia, we just seem to continue to grow year after year. And in fact, when UFI started our research covering Asia in 2005, we estimated there were 8 million net square meters sold in Asia. And last year, according to our estimates, 23 million. So that is massive growth in about 15 years. And that growth was very regular year after year. Even 10 years ago, through the global financial crisis, most markets actually grew in terms of net square meters sold. So it would be pretty easy to be confident that our models were secure and our futures were secure. But actually, even just in the past 2 years, most of our members are coming back to us and telling us that they see more change ahead than they've ever seen in their careers before. So what I want to take a few minutes this morning, I want to take to outline what I see as some of the key changes laying ahead. And then we have 8 great sessions today with industry leaders who are going to touch on some of these key changes. So the first one, Chairman Kim already mentioned in his opening, M&A. That is clearly an important topic and on the minds of our members. If you look in the past 2 years, we had more significant acquisitions than in the past 10 years. Chairman Kim mentioned Informa's acquisition of UBM, making the world's largest global exhibition organizer. Blackstone, a private equity group, acquired Global Sources, Clarion, and Penwell in the US. So very quickly, they became a significant owner of a major global exhibition organizer when you put those 3 together. You also have some other organizers making acquisitions in the UK. Closer Still was acquired by private equity. ITE acquired Essential. And Comexposium, their private equity stakeholder Charterhouse, sold out to a insurance company. So all of that was in the past 2 years. So what that change is going to mean for the competitive landscape in Asia is really an open question. The second key trend is really a subset of that first one, and that's the entrance of private equity. I mentioned Blackstone and Charterhouse. Providence is the one that acquired Closer Still in the UK. These are major players who have been attracted to our industry for a number of reasons. For the profit margins, the fat, reliable profit margins that we've experienced for the past 10 plus years here in Asia. They also like the diversified nature of some of the portfolios of global players, so that makes them more immune to downturns in the economy. But private equity will definitely have an impact on how our industry operates. Private equity operates by a pretty standard formula. They acquire assets, they consolidate them, they cut costs, and then they set aggressive growth targets. And then on top of that, typically they exit those investments within 3 to 5 years. So what that means for our industry is really unknown. We've never seen this much outside interest and investment in our industry. So I think that is another key issue that our members come to us asking for research, asking for information and insights. And I think we'll touch on that again today. The third issue is really our models. Are they going to change? The way we earn revenues today, is it going to be the same in 5 years, in 10 years? It's been unchanged for decades, the way the exhibition industry works. But in recent months, there's been signs that maybe that model is aging. Maybe it's possibly under threat. Optimistically, we could say maybe it's just evolving. But some major shows have died in the past year. So CeBIT is no more. Interbike, owned by Emerald in the US, is now gone. Baselworld, which is truly a global brand, is in very steep decline. So UFI's members ask, what does this mean? Does this mean we are not meeting the expectations or the needs of our exhibitors or visitors? Or does it mean that this is just part of the regular life cycle of exhibitions? Exhibitions come and go over time. Also an open question. And then in the background of that, you have the impact of technology. Technology on-site, online afterwards to extend the life of the exhibition. It's going to really impact the way our exhibitors and visitors interact with each other. That could also change the model and change where we get our revenues from. And then the fourth and final issue is related to venues. We are definitely seeing a trend in our members asking for research on venue capacity in key markets and changing venue models. And again, we're very lucky to have the CEO and president of COEX and Kintex to share their views on their strategies and their revenue models as well. In Asia, we see more investment in venues than any other market worldwide. We have some fascinating projects underway. We have Gerd from JWC, and he's been working on the Shenzhen World project for the past 2 years. I'm sure most of you know about this. When it opens, when it's finished, there will be 500,000 square meters of available space at Shenzhen World. That's much more than the capacity of the whole Japanese market in one venue. Similarly, in Shanghai, you have NECC, which is 400,000 square meters, which opened in 2015. So these are mega venues that have the ability to shift the market, even in huge markets like China. Also, other markets in Asia are taking different approaches to their venue strategy. In Australia, you have Sydney ICC. They developed what they call the precinct strategy, where they've built a venue that really sort of works into the fabric of the city. They're trying to build an entertainment district with the venue as the center of it. Singapore is looking at this model as well for their city. And then there's the revenue models of venues as well. Traditionally in Asia, it's been hall rental. That's where we get our revenues. But Korea is somewhat of a leader in this area, where you have your venues that organize events not only in Korea, but abroad as well. So our members are looking at all of these stacking changes and seeing that the industry really is not going to be the same as it was 10 years ago. So with that in mind, this is a really important event, and we have really fantastic speakers to address some of these key issues. So I can't think of a better way to get us started than with David Dubois. David is the president and CEO of IAEE, and he spends his more time on a plane than I think anybody I know. In fact, last week I was at an event in China, and of course David was there as well. This week I'm in Korea, and he's here with us here now. So without further ado, I'd like to invite David Dubois to the stage to share his views on global exhibition trends. David?
Thank you, Mark. Mark, I think that your boss, Kai Haddendorf, with UFI, probably spends more time on the plane. He spends more space on the plane because he's much taller. He takes up a lot more space. And he's a good friend as well. So, Joe on Akim. Good morning. Did I do okay with that? That's never easy. As Mark said, Mark, outstanding setup for today. Appreciate the overview. We're going to have a lot of information we're going to share. What I'd like to do is kind of give you an overall perspective of the mice industry for a minute before I get into my presentation. Obviously, the presentations are in the outstanding handout book that you have, so if you want to follow along on that within that book on my presentation and all the others today, certainly please do so. It is estimated that the global mice industry, meetings, incentives, conventions, and exhibitions, is worth $1.3 trillion US dollars. 1.3 trillion US dollars. Kai and Ufi and Christian, Mark, and my staff at SEER are trying to work out the methodology to better understand the global exhibition industry. In the United States exhibition industry is estimated to be about $91 billion, or about 20,000 shows of significant size every year. Our best guess is that once we do the information, pull the information and get the assumptions together to identify the global exhibition industry, it's going to be worth well over 200 billion US dollars. UFI has done an outstanding job of taking the Global Exhibitions Day concept, moving it forward. I believe this year it's going to be the 6th version. So please mark your calendar for June 5th, where we will be celebrating the global exhibition industry. And last year, I believe we had activation in over 85 countries. And UFI will be sending that information out to the project team. They own the project, and I think, Mark, there's about 60 different organizations, 50 or 60 different organizations around the world that support it. And I know Akai, Mr. Kim as well. But I really encourage you, and so does Kai and the team at UFI, to do activations across Korea or any other country that you live in as you sit here today. Very quickly, IAE has 1,300 member organizations in 52 countries, and our PRIDE program is our CEM program. We have 3,000 certified exhibition managers in 22 countries. And I'm pleased to say that 60% of our certified exhibition managers are in Asia. 60%. So you have, as an Asian MICE community, engaged training and education, which I will touch on as well, as a very, very core value and a very, very core reason to exist and go forward into the future. So the future is now. I'm going to briefly take you through a lot of slides. As I said, the information is in your handouts. If you want to, I'll be here through tomorrow afternoon. If you want to have additional conversations on any of these subject areas, as I'm sure all the other speakers, Mark, will be willing to do as well, please tap me on the shoulder, and we'd love to have a conversation. There are 3 learning outcomes that I hope to accomplish and share with you this morning. Learn trends currently impacting the overall MICE industry. Certainly, we believe that the 1.3 trillion US dollar MICE industry on a global basis is incredible. We believe that 10 to 15% of that 1.3 trillion is certainly the exhibition industry, which most of us in this room are very, very focused on. I'm going to touch on and hope that all of us will learn expected impact of future trends and certainly understand why anti-complacency is not an option. Here's a quote I want to share with you. You have to have an international reference of competition. You have to go beyond your home. As was said by Mr. Kim and Mark this morning, obviously we're in a global marketplace. in talking to our friends from India, they're here to talk about, when we spoke this morning, talk about how more Koreans can be involved in the Indian exhibition industry and vice versa. Obviously, the complexity and the fear of failure is certainly something that drives us, and I'll touch on the economic impacts, things like tariffs that are challenging all of us today. I'm going to quote some research from the Center for Exhibition Industry Research Foundation, which is an IAE sister organization that Mrs. Kathy Breeden, our Chief Executive Officer of SEER, helps to do great research, as Mark's company does on behalf of Asia. And here are some business conditions that came out of studies this past year. 75% predict favorable business conditions going into 2019. 56% favorable budget and increased spend. And the forecasted industry growth, and I'm sure we'll hear some great statistics with our next speaker, is estimated at about 2.5% going into and concluding in 2019. Obviously, there's a lot of hot zones. There's a lot of economic stress. There's a lot of conversations going on that may have an impact, hopefully not too negative as we go forward in the exhibition industry. But as you can see on the here we are. On the right-hand side of the slide, I'm not going to read these to you, but you can see market share holdings are strong, flat spending per exhibition, number of exhibitions holding strong, and booth size increasing slightly. But once again, as Mark said, there's a lot of different pressures. The models are changing. So obviously that we're here to talk about that all day today. I'm going to touch on all of these bullet points in a short period of time. Not going to go into a lot of depth, but obviously societal changes. Let me touch for a moment on political shifts. Tomorrow, Tuesday, in the UK, there will be a Brexit vote. So who knows what's going to happen there? Whatever happens, hopefully it'll be positive. Most forecasters are thinking that it's going to be quite a challenge to see what happens, because if you take all of Britain and all of a sudden they're not part of the EU, it has all kinds of impact on attendees coming from Britain and the EU, exhibiting companies coming. So I'm not going to talk too much about that, but obviously there are political shifts and economic disruptions that are challenging. As we speak, the United States is in conversation with our friends in China about tariffs. We're hopeful that that settles down. I can tell you that the U.S. Travel Association estimates that due to the shutdown that's happening over a wall in the United States, and I'm sure we'll have some interesting, Mark and I always have great conversations being a Canadian and American about the politics of our two countries. But I can tell you that a lot of these political and economic disruptions are challenging to our industry. In the U.S. alone, because of our shutdown, which is now going into week 4, over a southern border wall issue, is costing the U.S. travel industry $100 million a day. So these are the kind of things that we have as an industry need to advocate for. Anything that's in your own country that you feel is disruptive and negative to the exhibition industry. Once again, going back to June 5th, Global Exhibitions Day, think about what you can do in your own country, your own cities, your own provinces to affect and guide and positively influence the exhibition industry. As you can see, the other points here are very valid. I'm going to touch on some of them as we go through, but certainly at the bottom there, human talent development, and corporate social responsibility are incredibly important for all of us. Interesting slide. More data was created in 2017. Should have updated to 2018 than the last 5,000 years. But less than half of 1% was analyzed. So what are you doing as an organizer to analyze the data? We all know the terminology big data. What are you doing in your own organization to analyze the data, your registration data, your exhibit surveys, your exhibitor surveys, to help drive decisions for future shows, for launching of potential new shows, but more importantly, retaining and growing attendance, which drives profitability of everything we do in the exhibition industry. I just left Shenzhen, where 3 different organizations, IAEE, Meeting Professionals International, and the Society of Incentive Travel Executives are running an innovation summit in Shenzhen. And it completes its process today. And the whole focus that we're going to take around the world, not just in Asia, but around the world, is this concept of innovation. And what are you doing to innovate, to grow, and as Mark said, to change the model of your shows, to enhance the experiences? Do you have, in one of the surveys that we put out last year, do you have an innovation strategy in your organization? I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but you know the answer in your own organization. Is it yes or is it no? In this survey, 51% said they did not have an innovation strategy. And what do I mean by innovation strategy? What are you thinking about to do something different? What are you creating that will allow your attendees and your exhibitors to be so thrilled that when they go back to the office and somebody says, hey, Mark, hey, Mr. Kim, how was your experience at the trade fair you just went to? It was so fantastic. I'm already budgeting to go back next year. So what are you doing to innovate, to be edgy, to be different, to be engaging, to be creative? And that's the key to going forward in the new models that are morphing ahead. 57% do not have a process to turn ideas into reality. We all go back after our shows and events. We just had Expo in New Orleans, so when I'm back in the office on Thursday, we're going to have our post-show meeting. And we'll sit there for 4 or 5 hours, and we'll go through all the information. But what I'm going to do and what my staff is going to do is we're going to think about, okay, here's the positives, here's some of the challenges, here's what we can improve. But what are we going to do in terms of putting action against those items? And then my job, and Kathy Breeden, our Chief Operating Officer's job, is to put action items against those ideas and turn them into reality and turn them into new ideas. And then 87% want their companies to be more innovative. But once again, going to the top, 51% do not even have a strategy. So please, I challenge you to think about what you're doing in your organization. Here's a pretty amazing slide. 2 years ago, we hired a futurist. The gentleman used to be the chairman of the World Future Society. A lot of great consultants in our world, right? We have one sitting in the front row. We brought Derek in, and Derek challenged us with this slide. And if you look at it, and this is in your handouts, if you look at it, everything's about leveraging global advancement. But all the different areas, technology, digital, economic aspects, social aspects, political and legislation, environmental aspects. Please take this slide home and put it in front of your management team and help guide what you're thinking about doing for the rest of 2019. I think we just started 2019. But think about what you're doing going forward. We took this 2 years ago once we really digested it, Kathy Breeden and myself as staff. And that helped us drive what is now a 3 to 5 year strategic plan for our own organization. And Mark, I'm sure at UFI you have these kind of strategic planning sessions, because between UFI and IE, we have the ability as 2 outstanding organizations to help guide what's happening. And Mr. Kim with Akai and everything that we can do that Mark and I and our staffs can do to help grow the Korean exhibition and events industry, we are there to help you. But take a really good look at this. I'm going to move on to the next slide because it's a lot to digest. Machine learning, deep learning, artificial intelligence. How many of you went to CES last week in Las Vegas? I think there was at least a dozen ladies and gentlemen that went to that show. What was it all about? What you're seeing on this slide, right? Voice and image recognition, chatbots, facial recognition. AI can create $1.4 to $2.6 trillion of value in marketing and sales across the worldwide businesses. technology is driving us crazy. It's also driving additional engagement and success and experiences. You know, when we walk across trade fairs now and you have robots coming up that are chatbots that you can ask them any questions, it's kind of like a Siri, and I know there's different technologies here in Asia that I'm not as familiar with. But what are you doing to make the experience for your attendees and the return on investment for your exhibitors that's that much more positive and impactful? What have I been talking about? You obviously now know that there's a theme of all my comments this morning. It's all about engagement. You know, we thought about in our own association, we are the International Association of Exhibitions and Events. 6 months ago, I brought to my board, let's change our name again. For those of you who know the history of our association, it was NAEM, IAEM, IAE. Our friends in India, we get confused, IEIA. So, you know, there's all kinds of vowels. But we thought about the International Association of Exhibitions and Experiences. So think about what you're doing for your shows, or if you're a venue, or you're a partner, supplier to the ecosystem of the exhibition industry. What are you doing working with your clients? If you're the client, what are you doing working with your exhibitors to make sure that you help them create the best, most positive and engaging experience that maximizes, once again, I want all of you to think about how you can go home after a show and all of your attendees, all your exhibitors. Wouldn't it be nice, Margaret, if you had 100% retention of every exhibitor for every show that Informa does around the world? Would that drive your profitability? Oh my goodness. You could retire early. I could retire early. But think about that. What can you do? The average retention of exhibitors, Mark, you might have different statistics than we do, but it's probably pretty close. 85% might be an average. Some shows 65%, which means they're shrinking. Some shows 90% because there's a waiting list like a CES. But think about what you're doing in the area of design, research, ideation, learning, prototypes, analyze. Once again, take a systematic approach to what you're doing. Once again, I'm not assuming that you're not doing that. I'm trying to encourage you to do more of that. Collaborative technologies, virtual hybrid, internet, food and beverage. We're going to touch on a couple of these things for the next few minutes. FOQ/NOP. Anybody know what that is? FOQ/NOP. When I was in the hotel business, I came in one morning for a 7 a.m. executive committee meeting. I worked for Ritz-Carlton Hotels, a wonderful chain. And on the top of my desk was FOQ/NOP. I couldn't figure out what that was. So I take it to the executive committee. There's seven ladies and gentlemen. And I look over at the lady in the room who's the chief financial officer, controller, and she's smiling at me. And I said, "Did you put something on my desk?" She goes, "Yeah, figure that out." What she was trying to get across to me as the sales and marketing executive of that hotel was focus on quality, not on price. Focus on quality, not on price. So if you go back to your offices, many of you are salespeople, many of you manage salespeople. Put that up on a flip chart one day. Have a conversation. Focus on the quality of your product and service. Focus on what you offer. Then there might be, and hopefully will be, less debate and less negotiations on price. FOQ/NOP. I'll never forget that, and that was 20-some years ago. For those of you in the venue management business, I know you're doing this. This is an amazing facility. This is my third time to COEX. And it's fantastic that you have all kinds of flexibility. And as I was standing on the tower on Sunday afternoon, looking down on the Shenzhen World project that I was at, and Margaret and I talked about, you've been there half a dozen times. It's amazing. They have about 15,000 workers just going at it all day long, 7 days a week, 3 shifts of 8-hour shifts. And I'm thinking to myself, is this just an exhibition facility? And this is an example. Exhibition facilities, that one in particular was building incredible flexible space, multi-purpose space. Show organizers, and I'll touch on this in a moment, certainly here and around the world are focusing on experiences, as I've mentioned many, many times. And what are we doing? What are we doing with education? At our own little show last month in New Orleans, Expo, we had 142 education sessions. A third of them were on the trade show floor. So we built right into the trade show floor educational experiences of 15, 20 minutes at a time, all scheduled, by the way, sponsored. Nice revenues, right, Mark? Great opportunity for enhancing experiences through education on trade show floor. So flexible meeting space, working that through and keeping attendees on the floor by offering education in different pods. The technologies today are amazing. You can actually wear headsets and you can actually hear the presenters, even in pipe and drape sort of environments, because the technology is so advanced. IACC is the International Association of Conference Centers, the largest association of conference centers. Many are hotels. IAC has very high standards on experiences, food and beverage, all contained, most of them in a single price environment. But their research will not surprise you. Venue operator perceptions of the meeting venue elements that will be more important in the next 3 to 5 years. Now, what they mean by high-quality internet infrastructure is certainly technology, everything that we're doing to enhance and support the live events, the business events, the trade shows. Flexibility of space, I mentioned, technology. And I'll touch on now some unique flexible meeting spaces. I'm going to show you some pictures now very quickly of some examples of some unique environments on a trade show floor, on a trade fair floor. Gamification, once again, how do you engage the attendees, figure out, work with your exhibitors. By the way, it's a very unhealthy statistic when we do research, when we ask how many show organizers offer exhibitor training. Probably 50 to 60%, Mark. Is that about the same here in Asia in your research, the good research you all do? Less than 10% of the exhibitors take advantage of it. And it's free. It's online. So what are you doing to coach as a sales executive selling stands and selling exhibit space and sponsorships, as many of you do in this room? What are you doing to get creative in having 1 hour marketing consulting conversations in advance of the show, 3 months before a show, with every single one of your exhibitors? I know it's hard to do if you have 1,200 exhibiting companies. Very hard to do. But figure out how you can be a consultant to your exhibitors to make their experience that much more positive. Because, Margaret, we're still trying to get to 100% retention of our exhibitors at individual shows. I don't know if we'll get there before I retire, but wouldn't that be great? Coloring books, wall encouraging participation. Once again, some creative ideas. This is a fun one. A pretzel wall, a donut wall. So if you're an exhibitor at wouldn't this be unique? If you're an exhibitor at a concrete show, or at a machinery show, or at a book fair, wouldn't it be cool to have something that's magnetic and that gets attendees into your booth? So once again, it's our job as show organizers, it's your job as an exhibitor to be creative and engaging. Try to figure out what the magnets are to get attendees to come by and come into your stand and have a conversation with you instead of just walking by and waving, "Hi, have a nice day," which happens probably 85% of the time. Culinary competitions. This is an example in the United States with the American Library Association. I didn't go to this show, but it looked like it was a lot of fun. They had a culinary competition right on the trade show floor. And this particular one is a medical association. Looks like maybe it was a live surgery that was done on the trade show floor. Once again, this particular one, and I don't know if this is the one that did it, but healthcare and medical type trade shows are certainly doing live demonstrations and actual live surgeries on trade show floor. Hopefully they're using dummies and not real people. But my point is that they're then streaming to all the non-attendees. They're streaming out to their membership, to their communities, how certain new surgeries and techniques and healthcare is being done. Because not everyone in every industry comes to the trade show. But maybe if they experience this online and learn something, they may walk into their boss and say, next year I'm going to budget, I need to go to the International Association of Cardiology Surgery, whatever it is. And that trade show is important because you know what? I learned a little bit by tapping in on my computer from my desk and taking notes and getting the handouts, but I need to be there. So boss man, boss woman, can I budget to go next year? Once again, soft chair lounges, make it easy and comfortable for people to go to your show. Event design, break down some of the silos within your own organization. I'm not going to go through each of these points, but you can see internally and you can see externally. Just touching on just one of these internally, everybody's involved in sales. I'll use one example. Every single person is involved in sales. If you're the chief operating officer, you're the CEO, are you making sales calls with your top exhibitors? Are you saying to your sales executives, tell me who your top 5 prospects are, I'm going to make phone calls. Once again, trying to get retention, trying to get additional revenues in. If you're at a senior management position level, don't just let your salespeople go at it. Get involved, get engaged, and help them as an example internally. And then externally, working with all your contractors, the stakeholders, the technology companies, the stand builders. Every year at Expo, we have a dinner on the closing night where we have CISO, UFI, ALMA. We have the Booth Designers Association, IELA, which is the Logistics Association. We all sit around for a couple hours, enjoy some wine, get creative. It's on the last night of our event. And I finally figured out, Mark, how to do this. I have somebody taking notes because when you're starting to drink a little bit of wine and it's the last night, you're tired, but boy, the ideas are flowing. So what are you doing in that case to integrate your international partners? Many of you partner your shows with local industries. You have advisory boards. What are you doing to better engage them to become more successful? Because the more successful your show is, hence the more successful your industry is going to be that you serve. As I close, I'm going to touch on sustainability. I'm going to just encourage you to do more. I know that everybody does a lot of what they can do to have green shows, to have green events. You know, I walked around this great facility this morning and wonderful opportunities to put paper away or other garbage that needs to be processed. So be responsible. What are you doing at your show? Think about all of the quote-unquote trash and or disposables at the end of your show. What are you doing working with the local communities, the food banks, the homeless shelters? What are you doing to help support and give back to the local community where you have your shows? And I know many of you do this, but I encourage more of that to happen. Talent management. The industry continues to grow. The industry continues to be enhanced. We need to do a better job, and I know, Mr. Kim, that you have very good relationships here in Korea with your universities. I encourage you to do more of that. I encourage all of you in your own cities and communities where you have colleges and universities to go in on Career Day and talk about the exhibitions and events industry. Encourage the young ladies and gentlemen, typically in the ages of 18 to 21, that are trying to think about what they do when they grow up and they get their schooling done behind them. We have a big gap. We have a big opportunity for talent development and talent management going forward. And certainly inclusivity, the incredible focus on women's leadership. Our own association has launched women's leadership programs in India this year. We did one in Thailand last year. We've done 6 or 7 in the United States, 6 or 7 years in a row. So what do you do in your own organization in terms of inclusivity, thank you, women, diversity, and various cultures? So the future of jobs, as stated by the World Economic Forum, obviously we're focusing now on reinventing the HR function in your own organizations. I mentioned talent, diversity, mentoring, and training. Once again, dust off your training plans. If you don't have a written training plan and a talent development plan written, how many of us have heard this for years from our schooling and from our bosses? If you don't write it down and put performance measures against it, chances are something may not happen. So take a look at your talent development plans, your HR plans, and look at where you're getting the new ladies and gentlemen coming into our industry, because certainly in many cities our workforces are aging. This is a study done by Meeting Professionals International, the largest MICE industry association in the world. They have 18,000 members in 60 countries. And they are a partner of ours in a global MICE collaborative with MPI, the Society of Incentive Travel Executives, which is in the incentive industry, mostly corporate incentives, reward programs, and IE. But MPI's focus here is there going to be an increase in full-time, part-time, and contract? There really is a trend to have more contract workers. Obviously, that's a little less expensive. You don't have all of the benefits and the total compensation package. I know a really good friend of mine who's a senior meeting professional based in Austin, Texas, has 2 clients. She was full-time when I worked at MPI. She was full-time. And now she's got 2 and maybe 3 clients that all pay her fees, and she's an independent planner. So a lot of that is happening, and she's able to stay home with her 2 beautiful children and work from the home. So a lot of flexibility in this area as well. Another trend that's been going on for many years, but I want you to embrace it. In my own organization, and certainly Mark with Kai, we believe that the best ideas are not what comes from Kai or David. They come from the staff, and they come up. We think about it, we talk about it, we massage it, then we bring it down, and we activate it and make it happen. So once again, I don't know all of your management styles, but I strongly believe in the fact that team collaboration, especially in this world of millennial employees, is very, very important. So as I finish, a very wise man by the name of Rohit Talwar, over the next 5 years, asked these several questions. Your robot manager, how will he or she, I don't think they're he and she, how will it take instructions, or how do you take instructions from robots? Human augmentation. There is research to suggest that employees would be prepared to have chips inserted when they enter secure buildings. What's that doing with the augmentation of humans? Keeping human contact, implications of going too far forward, automation, protecting our mental health, and as I mentioned, your remote workforce, how to manage a workforce you're unable to actually see. I will close with this slide. Challenge is building a high level of relevance and trust to the market. I talked a lot this morning about attendees and exhibitors. What is brand? What is branding? The brand of your show, it's trust. So if you're in the machinery business, you're in the food business, you're in the book business, publishing business, And those are the kind of shows you're doing. What are you doing to build and hold on to trust with your exhibitors and your attendees? Building this relevance will require more marketing tools and capabilities more than ever to build successful shows. It will also require generating the right mix of exhibitors, as well as more on-target education programming. Once again, my example of our own show. Well, think about it. When you're the show of shows, you've got to be pretty edgy. You got to do new things. You got to be exciting. We did 142 sessions, the most we've ever done, in a 3-day period of time. So what are you doing to enhance your programming and your content? What are you doing to enhance your high-quality networking opportunities to attract the right audience and build brand loyalty to your exhibition? If you're in business, you need to understand the environment. You need to have a vision of the future, and you need to know the past. So that's the summary statement I'm leaving with you today, and here are some resources that are available in your handout as well. And once again, I wish you a wonderfully successful forum, summit here in Seoul, and more importantly, I wish you a very successful 2019. Thank you.
Oh, don't go anywhere yet. Thanks very much. Great presentation.
You want this now?
I don't need that, no.
Can you make me disappear?
Technology's not that advanced yet. Any questions for David? Don't be too shy. He covered a lot of ground in that presentation. Since our theme is Beyond Borders, what about U.S. organizers looking beyond the U.S. borders, either for partnership or for organizing events? I think traditionally the U.S. organizers have been more focused on the domestic market. Would you say that's fair?
Correct. And yeah, the U.S. market, as I mentioned earlier, Mark, is over 20,000 shows. And it's a very mature market. But there are, we just did an Asia survey, which I shared at CEFCO last week. And once again, about 23 to 24% of IAE members, which are predominantly U.S.-based organizers, either have shows or looking to have shows in Asia. But that
in Asia,
but Mark, that percentage hasn't increased. It's been pretty steady. So obviously, there's certain industries, there's certain brands, like World of Concrete, for example. There's certain brands that can be taken outside the U.S., but because of our great friends and success with most of the German messes who have taken a lot of their shows around the world, the United States is not as aggressive because 65% of our members are associations, and they're a lot more risk adverse, versus a for-profit company who has hedge funds that want you to take chances and grow.
Right, and associations tend to be focused on their members' needs, which would be domestic primarily, I guess.
Correct.
Right? Interesting. Okay, last chance for David. Margaret, do we have a microphone for Margaret in the front, please? It's coming, Margaret, other side.
Okay, great. Hi, David. Just a quick question, because your sister research center probably has lots of data. Earlier, Mark's comment about in exhibition industry we're not totally immune to what's happening in other industry, and all of us have been putting efforts into non-boost revenue development, especially in digital. And to improve experience, we, providing a lot more educational content that come with a lot of revenue opportunity. So curious, just in North America, non-boost revenue as a percentage of total organizers, revenue income, what's percentage like? And digital as a part of that, how fast is that growing?
Well, it's actually, thank you for the question, Margaret. It's actually pretty flat because as the sponsorship revenues and the digital revenues grow, that exhibit space sales revenue is actually declining a little bit. It's not a lot. And I don't know, Mark, what your research in Asia shows. Is it similar?
We don't have that data.
You don't have that kind of data?
No.
But I think it's safe to say that that's a typical trend. In my own association, once again, small show, 300 stands, we had a 25% increase in cash sponsorships for our show last month, and a 5% increase in booth revenues.
Is that the
So
gift?
once again, the chief marketing officer, he or she in a company that's thinking about where to invest their money for sales and marketing, are certainly looking at the return on investment of a show. But a lot of times they're saying, I want to downsize the stand because all the stands and all the booths around the world now, unless it's a big machinery show, are much lighter. In many cases, they're smaller. So what's happening with augmented reality, John Deere, I'll take an example of John Deere, the machinery show in the United States. You walk, ConAg, ConExpo, you walk into that show, and Megan Tennell, who's one of our members, senior vice president there, said, David, they're down 15% in total weight of what they move in terms of machinery, because now John Deere will bring a sample, like a mini version of that, and then take you into a booth, put goggles on you, and walk you through and take you on the machine out into the farmland and show you how that works, instead of you having to climb up to these big, huge machines that they have. So I think it's reducing, Margaret, a little bit, but really smart salespeople are saying, okay, you have 100,000 euros to spend, whatever the number is. And if you're going to reduce your space size, then I want you to spend the same amount of money. And what can you sponsor? Can you sponsor an education session? Can you sponsor registration, focus? Different sponsorship opportunities.
Require
But it
new
is
skill
changing.
sets,
It is changing, but not
yeah.
drastically.
Great, David, I think we're going to leave it
My
there.
pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks very much. We have a parting gift for you, actually. So I think there you go. We have a photographer.
Let me comb my hair. Look at he's got so much hair. Look at this. Thank
Great.
you.
David, thanks again.
Pleasure.
Great job.